Wesley Morgan stepped into the restaurant like any other customer that night, nothing special. A worn Green Bay Packers hoodie pulled low over his head, clean-shaven face, and a southern drawl that no one would recognize as the CEO of anything. He wasn't looking for attention, just a meal, just another anonymous visit to see how things were really running. But what he didn't expect, what no one could have expected, was what he would witness before he even made it to the buffet line. The scene that played out in front of him, quiet but unmistakable, would change everything for this store, for these employees. For him. "Excuse me, sir. You can't just stand around asking for leftovers. This isn't a soup kitchen." The words came sharp, loud enough to echo across the otherwise dull hum of the evening crowd. Wesley froze, not even making it to the buffet, a plastic tray clutched in his hand like it had become a weight he couldn't drop. A thin man stood at the counter, his clothes worn, his face haggard. He wasn't asking for a handout, wasn't begging, but just standing there, quietly, looking for some decency. And instead of kindness, he was met with cruelty. The employee behind the counter, a young man with red cheeks and a scowl, didn't hesitate. "You want food, you pay like everyone else." No warmth, no empathy, just an order. Wesley wanted to step in, but he didn't. Not yet. He stood frozen for a moment, watching. The homeless man mumbled something, barely audible. "Look, I don't care if you're hungry." The employee spat, louder now, more forceful, as if his voice alone could dehumanize someone. "Go to a shelter or something. You're creeping people out." It was then that he saw her, Whitney, the young woman working the salad station, who had heard the commotion, her eyes flicking nervously from the man to the employee behind the counter. Without saying a word to anyone else, she reached beneath the counter and pulled out a small plate. A few scoops, a few scraps. She walked over to the man and, with a quiet voice, handed him the plate. "Here, just don't tell anyone I gave you this, okay?" she said, almost in a whisper, as if the act itself needed to be kept a secret. The man blinked, took the plate, and nodded. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. The employee behind the counter, Eric, wasn't pleased. He muttered something under his breath, his frustration palpable. "Seriously, Whitney? You're just going to feed every stray now?" But Whitney didn't flinch. She didn't react. She didn't fight back. She just stared at him, her eyes steady. "He's a person," she said, as if that was all that needed to be said. Wesley watched this, his jaw tightening. He could feel the anger building inside him. The world wasn't supposed to work this way. Employees weren't supposed to treat people like this, not when they were just trying to get by, not when all they wanted was a warm meal. After the homeless man left, and after the tension settled, Wesley went to the cashier, paid for his meal, and took his tray. He found a seat near the back, facing the food line, and waited. But he couldn't touch his food. Not yet. Not after what he'd seen. Minutes passed, maybe 15, before he got up. He walked over to the drink machine, pretending to fill his cup, but instead leaning toward Whitney. "Hey, does this happen often?" he asked, his voice casual but heavy with curiosity. Whitney hesitated before answering, her eyes flicking back toward the counter. "Sometimes. He's come by before. Doesn't ask for much. And management? They don't care unless someone complains." Wesley nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "You ever get in trouble for helping?" "A verbal warning," she replied with a tight smile. "Whatever that means." Wesley paused, his gaze lingering on her. "Thanks," he said quietly. "That was decent of you." She looked at him, surprised. "Thanks." It was the first time anyone had really acknowledged the kindness she had shown, and it wasn't lost on her. That night, Wesley didn't just see the food being served. He saw something else, something much bigger. He saw a culture, one that had allowed people to be treated like this. He saw a company that had failed to look out for its people, employees and customers alike. And he knew he couldn't just walk away. The next morning, before the restaurant had even opened, Wesley drove back. The lot was still half empty, a few cars scattered on the cracked asphalt. The air was cold, enough to make his breath visible. He parked out of sight and slipped into the employee entrance with a spare key fob he'd kept from the early days. The place was quiet, too quiet. The kitchen buzzed with overhead lights. A young cook in his 20s chopped onions with earbuds in, oblivious to the world around him. A dishwasher loaded trays into the machine. A few servers, their aprons still neatly folded at their waists, scrolled through their phones. Wesley walked straight to the break room. Christina, The store manager walked in soon after, a clipboard and coffee cup in hand. "Morning," she said automatically, before seeing him and freezing. "Mr. Morgan," she stammered, realizing who he was. "We need to talk," Wesley said evenly, his tone firm. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't even a question. It was a statement. Now. They stepped out into the dining area. It smelled faintly of old fried chicken and bleach. Empty chairs stood upside down on tables. Wesley turned to Christina. "I was here last night. As a customer." She blinked. "I didn't see you." "You wouldn't have," Wesley said, his voice even. "I came in under a different name. Sat in the back. Watched how your team interacts with customers. Watched how they treat each other." Her mouth opened, then shut again. "There's a reason this store is slipping," he continued, his eyes locking onto hers. "And it's not the food. It's the culture. It's what you allow to happen under your leadership." Christina tried to defend herself. "I run a tight ship. We follow the protocols." "Protocols didn't stop one of your employees from berating a man in need," Wesley interrupted, his voice rising. "He didn't cause a scene. He didn't yell or steal or demand anything. He stood quietly, hoping someone might have enough decency to give him a plate. And instead of compassion, he was humiliated. Loudly. Publicly." Christina lowered her gaze. "And the employee who stepped in and tried to do the right thing," Wesley continued, "was treated like she was the problem." Christina flinched. "I didn't know." "No," Wesley cut her off. "Because you weren't on the floor. You were in the back like usual, letting someone like Eric run your front end." Eric, the employee who had mocked the homeless man, wasn't just an employee. He was a problem. A liability. "I want him gone immediately," Wesley said, his voice cold. "You're firing him." Christina's face drained of color. "You're terminating him?" Without hesitation, Wesley nodded. "Yes. Immediately." She hesitated, but the decision was final. Minutes later, Wesley stood in front of the rest of the staff. No podium. No fanfare. Just raw honesty. "My name is Wesley Morgan," he began. "I own this company. Some of you may have heard of me. Some of you probably haven't. That's on me." A few of the staff glanced at each other, unsure of what was coming next. "I built this business from the ground up. I know what it's like to clean fryers, scrub toilets, and close alone on a Friday night. I did it all because I believed this place could matter. That people could come here and be treated well. Eat a good meal. Feel seen." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Last night, I saw something that went against everything this company stands for." A man walked in off the street. He wasn't loud. He wasn't aggressive. He was hungry. And instead of compassion, he was mocked. A few heads turned. A few faces looked away, ashamed. "One of you stepped in and did the right thing," Wesley said, his voice gaining strength. The rest either watched or looked away. And the one who decided to speak for this company without permission. He turned to Eric. "Eric," he said flatly, "you're no longer employed here." Eric blinked, stunned. "You can't be serious." "I am," Wesley said firmly. "Collect your things. And leave." Eric stared at him, then glanced around the room, hoping for someone to back him up. No one did. Wesley turned back to the group. "We're not done here." For the first time in a long while, Wesley felt the weight of leadership in his bones. He didn't just want to fix things. He wanted to make sure they stayed fixed. And he wasn't leaving until the job was done. What do you think? Was Wesley right to step in and fire Eric immediately? Or do you think there was a better way to handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's talk about the challenges we face in everyday life when it comes to compassion, respect, and accountability. Have you ever witnessed something like this? Let's hear your stories.